The Appalachian Mountains have a reputation that goes back generations. Locals who won't go into certain woods after dark, and stories passed down about things that nobody can fully explain. Today we're getting into some of the scariest true encounters people have shared from those mountains. A few of these get genuinely unsettling, so stick around to the end. If you're into horror content like this, go ahead and subscribe, and let's get into them. This first story is from a Reddit thread titled, "What is the scariest / most uncanny experience you have had in the Appalachian Mountains?" I'll make a shorter story from a longer one involving sensitive auras, but once I was with a girl on Big Frog Mountain at dusk, miles away from anyone. We decided to walk up a trail when right behind the car, I stepped in a mud puddle with odd looking light brownish water. I pointed the unusual color to her, then we started walking. Not far up the trail, she started getting scared and we went back to the car. In the car, we started making out while lying in the front seat and she had her hand draped out of the window. I felt an odd sensation in my back. It had happened before when people were behind me and told her to pull her hand in, which she did. A few minutes later, I felt the sensation in my back again, but it felt more urgent. I rolled her window up, but being a horny ass teenager, continued with the makeout session. A few minutes later, it felt like someone had stuck a live wire to my back. I sat up, started the car, and headed back down the mountain. She was obviously confused and asked me what was wrong. I replied that I didn't know, but something was wrong somewhere. We went back to my parents' house and was assured by them the family was okay. Having calmed down some, we ate a little dinner, then started to leave. After I opened the car door for her, I walked around the back of the car. While walking, I glanced at the back of the car and saw handprints the same color of the mysterious mud puddle on the car. The last one was over the back window, and it was obvious someone was watching us while inching their way to the front driver's side window. When I saw the handprints, it was like being hit with a lightning bolt, and I knew what had happened. Cold chills ran all over me. I got her out of the car, and as soon as she saw the prints, she knew too. This story is the absolute truth, so help me and I will never forget it. I want to know what you guys think it might have been. Could it have just been a creepy guy trying to get a show, or was it something a little more paranormal? These stories are just way too vague, and I honestly have no idea. I live in the heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend. I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive this night. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there's a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain, almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly down the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, We exit the trail, grasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We began to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there's a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream from directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions, such as what the voice was possibly saying, or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice and pitch, shaking, almost just joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. Night in the Appalachians. So, my girlfriend and her friends invited me to stay at a small cabin Airbnb in the Appalachian Mountains near Seven Devils. The idea was just to go up there to enjoy some snow tubing and then some light drinking, hot tub, and board games in the cabin afterwards. So, the cabin was pretty high up in the mountain, and the drive up to it was kind of scary. Single car length road for the most part, no railings on the side of the road, so if you were on the side of the truck, which we'd rented a 4-wheel drive to make the drive up, thank goodness, it was a sheer drop on that side. Sure, if we drove off the road, we'd likely be stopped by some trees on the way down, but still a bit nerve-wracking. Another thing was some of the trees on the trail had faces on them for decoration. I think they were supposed to look cute, but they just looked kind of unnerving for most of us. I really should have taken pictures, but I was too anxious during the climb. The cabin itself was almost at the top of the mountain and fairly small. A small living room with a very tiny and narrow kitchen and 2 bedrooms. Hot tub on the lower porch cause the cabin itself was basically on the 2nd floor, so you had to go up to a stairway to get into it. Key to the cabin was in a lockbox, so no special door lock option, just an old-fashioned cabin. We came back after snow tubing and dinner. The others drank enough to get buzzed, while I only had a glass of wine, since I have a condition that makes it dangerous to get too much alcohol in my system. So relatively sober. Enjoyed the hot tub as planned, witnessed a beautiful shooting star, then played board games after that until around 1 a.m. and we all went to bed. I woke up a little after 4 a.m. because I was suddenly sweating, and then I felt kinda unsettled. Decided I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up, I left the bedroom, and nothing seemed amiss. So I used the bathroom. When I left the bathroom, the front door was wide open. Naturally, I felt immediately uneasy. But again, this was a small cabin, so there was nowhere for any intruder to hide. I could easily see the entire interior of the cabin from the tiny hallway. I decided maybe the last person through the door last night after the hot tub didn't fully close the door and lock it appropriately, because there is a sign by the door that says "close door firmly," and it was fairly windy outside. I mean, that wind was howling out there. So I go over to the door and close it, making sure that it's firmly enough in the doorway to fully lock it. I even jiggle the handle a few times and try to see if it'll open when locked. It doesn't budge, so I start to head back to the room. Then I hear the door rattle a little bit, and then I turn around and stare at it. I watch the lock itself turn, and then the door opens, and it doesn't slam open from the wind. It just slowly swung open. I stayed extremely still, because of course, that was crazy. The door has a huge clear window on it with no curtains, and a big window beside it that also doesn't have curtains, and there was absolutely no one on the other side of it. There's no way someone could have ducked out of view either and hurried away from the door after pushing it open either, because they would have had to make a lot of noise hurrying down the steps to get off the walkway. Like I said, it was an old-fashioned door as well with a simple lock and knob. No electronic buttons or anything to unlock or lock by buttons or remotely. After getting the nerve to close the door again and locking it firmly, nothing else happened that night. I couldn't really go back to sleep because I was just too scared to do so. The following morning, I told the others about it and they were pretty spooked too. But otherwise, glad we were only staying that one night. Before we packed up the truck to leave, there was a strange knocking noise coming from the surrounding woods. Not like someone knocking on a wall or a door. It was a deep, hollow sounding knock that only knocked twice, stopped for a while, and then would do it again. Maybe it was just trees knocking together, but after what happened early in the morning like that, it was a little unsettling. So yeah, I'm from Florida, and though I've experienced other paranormal activity before, that was the most physical thing I've experienced before, and I've definitely heard plenty of stories about odd occurrences in the Appalachians. In a way, I'm glad I experienced something, but I'll never forget the fear I felt. After all, my first thought was an intruder or something, and it could have been pretty bad being up there so high by ourselves. If we had any reason to run, we could have easily fallen off a cliff or something in the pitch black darkness outside. Honestly, that story was fairly weak. I got bored reading it, so I don't blame anyone if they didn't like it. I promise the next story is going to be way better, but it just felt like it was building up to something and then nothing really happens. There's definitely a good explanation for why the door was opening. I can't really think of one. If you can, definitely leave it in the comments. But I don't know. It sounds real just because the writing kind of sucks. No offense to the writer, but yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think of this story. Let's get on to the next one. This next one is from a thread that's titled, "What's your creepiest Appalachian monster story?" So, the standard answer I've got here is the crazy prepper whose land you just trespassed on to get an Instagram photo. But I do have a kinda scary story that I was actually involved in. So, I live in Southwest Virginia, Scott County to be exact. I'm 33. Back about a decade ago, I was in my early 20s and we had quite the party scene. Every weekend we had giant parties at a revolving set of houses. By backroading, I mean we'd pile into an F-150 with a sound system and cruise back roads, drinking, telling war stories, looking for shit to get into. It was a blast. So, one summer night, it's just my two friends and I. We're out on some forgotten logging road, and my one older buddy who was driving is like, "Hey, the old Wilson place is near here." The Wilson place was a house on this forest road that had belonged to this family. They'd moved to our tiny town, and they just weren't right. Like, they weren't normal. No one could ever put their finger on it, but we'd seen the dad of the family about, and he just wasn't normal. Their house had partially burned, and they left town and never came back, leaving all kinds of possessions and multiple cars at it. It had been a few years by the point of this story. So, my buddy who's driving drives down to it. Now, keep in mind, I'm the youngest of the group and wanting to go to law school and not wanting to get in trouble. This house sits across a field, and the grass and weeds had long since grown across the driveway and was like bumper high on this F-150. Drive up to this house just to look around. Buddy is like, "The door is wide open. People go in here all the time." Buddy swings the truck around and backs up towards the house so we can just drive out when we leave. We go in, there's nothing. I've got my Glock on my hip, so I'm not afraid of animals or anything. We poke around a little. There's nothing. Until we went upstairs. So, I don't know who said to go up there. It was a bad idea in this structurally compromised house, but we all three went up there. There were random household things everywhere, all half melted from the fire and water damage, and house being open to the elements for years. There's a mirror up there in what I suspect was a kid's bedroom. My friend is like, "Let's stand in front of it and take a photo with the flash on." Ooh, creepy. So, we do. Flash goes off and there's immediately a presence. In the flash of the camera, I 100% see a figure behind us, like a tall, faceless figure, right behind us. And I wasn't the only one who saw it, as my other two friends screamed, "Oh fuck," as we barreled down the stairs. So, we get back to the truck, regroup. What the fuck was that? We all confirmed that we absolutely saw something. The thing that sketches me out the most is that, okay, so we get in this F-150 to leave. Buddy wanted to look behind us, so popped the truck into reverse to back up. We're sitting there, truck in reverse, debating which way to back up, and the reverse sensor let out a single, solitary beep, like something was behind us. We backed up to this same place when we got there, and nothing in the environment triggered it. So, I'll never explain it. I don't know, this night has fucked with me for a decade because I still can't explain it, and I know what I saw. Alright, and that's some of the scariest Appalachian encounters that I found on Reddit. Let me know which one was your favorite. I really liked that last one. It was way different. It wasn't some skinwalker kind of thing. It was more ghost, paranormal kind. If you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed recording it, make sure to leave a like. And yeah, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video. Peace.